Past few years when we've seen the number of legislators who have faced various charges, criminal charges, in some cases have been convicted of criminal charges or pleaded guilty. Is there any reason that New Yorkers should have faith in the legislature to put their needs first? Because it seems like there are a number of folks who have put their own needs first.
Well, I think the public should put its needs first and is beginning to do that. 6% of the assembly members and 10% of the senators were dismissed in November. Now, that's not a lot, but it's a lot more than 1% and 2%, which had been the case for the last few years. So the public, more than depending on the legislators to show integrity, are beginning to show it themselves. Classically, the public dislikes the collective legislature, but no one dislikes their own individual senator or assembly person. The public is now starting to throw people out of their own districts, and I think that will add to what is already a wake-up call to Albany.
You worked with a number of these people who now are confronted with these charges. When you worked with people like Hiram Montserrat or Pedro Espada, did you have questions at that point about their activities, their motivations?
I never knew them well enough to know what their businesses were, and Senator Libel was on the other side of the aisle. I worked with him. I thought he was an outstanding legislator. You know, you don't know about these other issues.
Richard Ravitch was a man that you brought in to assist in primarily dealing with the economic crisis facing New York State. And there's at least a public perception that he was not listened to. Did you underutilize him? And was there just a basic disagreement between the two of you on how best to approach the problem of budget reform?
Well, this is a gotcha question, Bill, because if I had listened to Lieutenant Governor Ravitch and had borrowed $2 billion this year, you'd be asking me why I borrowed. The fact is that it seemed that most journalists and those who believe that we've got to stop kicking the can down the road did not think that borrowing was the best solution, I among them. Now, I didn't tell Lieutenant Governor to write the report that I wanted to write. He wrote the report he wanted to. But there was no way that I was going to add to borrowing that has driven the state $50 billion in debt. That's debt beyond the deficit. And Mr. Ravitch said that you couldn't pass the budget without borrowing. Well, we did. In addition to that, in the Ravitch plan was something called giving the legislature back what they call Silver v. Pataki legislation. I will not bore this audience trying to explain what it is, other than the fact that the legislature would now join with the governor in the presentation of the budget. So the budget deadline of April 1st would be the second deadline. The first one would be when the legislature and the governor agreed on the budget that would originally be put out. So we might be in April and May even before we put the budget out. This was Governor Pataki's victory twice in court, and then a public referendum, 78% approved by the public in 2006. And the lieutenant governor wanted to trade that back to the legislature for enhanced executive authority for a crisis. But a crisis comes along every 40 years. A budget battle comes along every year. So it would have been a devastating loss of power for the governor. Governor Cuomo-elect has already indicated that he wouldn't do it. And I would suggest to you that there are 4 governors who preceded me who you could call right now, they would never do it. So it isn't that people aren't listened to, it's just that it would have been impossible to have made that swap. It would have severely limited the already limited powers of the governor.
You are the first governor in New York State, and I'm not sure about the nation, but at least the first governor in New York State with your visual handicap. Have New Yorkers accepted that, or has it somehow affected their perception of you?
I think that New Yorkers overwhelmingly are proud of the fact that for the first time in this country, a governor has served a term who is legally blind. And I think what does happen is when there's a mischaracterization of a disabled person, it lends to a pedestrian notion that these people are bumbling and they're awkward and they're not very smart and that kind of thing. And that's what Saturday Night Live and a lot of print media engaged in. Now to try to cover up that they're engaged in it, now they say that my side isn't really that bad.
And I guess the closing question has to be, where is David Paterson headed once he leaves the governor's post? Have you thought about the future, and have you thought about what would really challenge you?